So here.
Chess, a game that has not had a rule change for 2000 years. Maybe it's time for an update? I don't usually do game jams. I'm a busy person and I feel that I don't have the time to cram a game together in 48 hours. It is pretty stressful and tiring. So when I saw that GoodGiss was hosting a 3-week-long game jam, I was excited. Finally, a game jam with a more relaxed time constraint. The theme was spring, which was a great source of inspiration, since spring is a season of beauty and brightness. At first I thought, should I make a platformer game? Some cute little platformer with animals and spring stuff? I decided, no! I want to do something a little different. As I was struggling to come up with some cool ideas, I settled down to play some puzzles on chess.com, and I found a different variant I hadn't tried before: solo chess. I found myself solving these solo chess puzzles in the Zen. It was completely satisfying to have the pieces consume each other and weave into spinning paths. And then I got the idea, why don't I make a variant of solo chess but with flowers? It was a quirky enough idea, so I took it and ran with it. I started to brainstorm more to really conceptualize this chess type game idea. I came up with flowers pollinating each other and I added different rules. I decided that not all flowers have to be pollinated, but a special flower should be the target. It's a bit like checkmating the king in chess. I also decided that flowers should wilt after pollinating. Essentially, the flowers kamikaze themselves. This is pretty much the opposite of what happens in solo chess. The other piece gets sacrificed there. I set up a Trello board like any good game developer to plan and monitor my tasks carefully. The jam came with an optional palette, but I wasn't a fan of it and I felt that the colours were too limited for my game, so I came up with my own palette, focused on bright and saturated colours. They worked together really well and I managed to create some good art. And then I drew some flowers, starting with a tulip and a daffodil, and then I drew some grass tiles. I made sure to keep these tiles relatively simple to not distract from the flowers. I got to work prototyping a clickable grid. I made a grid that was dynamically generated from a script and added the mechanic of clicking on squares and highlighting them. I then made sure only one could be highlighted at a time. Next, pieces had to be added to the squares. I set up a level code system which allows a list of pieces to be passed into the game and read. I simply made a string of characters, each character representing a different piece, and then separated it with block quotes. The string was read in and updated into the grid. With this setup, I could easily configure grid's contents and it helped to make level creation a lot easier. With the basic grid setup, I then had to program in the movement rule sets. Well, here we go. Bluebells move horizontally. This was easy as it was just a check to see if the square was on the same row as the other square. Daffodils move vertically. This just had to check for the modulo of the square using the number of columns. Alliums move in all directions. This calculated all the adjacent squares and checked if the chosen square was one of the adjacent squares. And then the tulips. These went in all diagonal directions and they were pretty painful to calculate. Eventually, after many failed pieces of code, I worked out the correct method and then all of the movement were programmed. I then imported the piece's art sprites. I decided to have unpollinated flowers in grayscale and I got to work on making animations for active flowers and pollination. When a flower is pollinated, I made little yellow particles show up to give a kind of magic-like effect. I made shooting animations for each flower, except for the prize flower of course, which play just before the flower wilts. I originally toyed with the idea of making animations showing each flower wilt, like a wilting animation, but instead I just went with like a fade out animation because I thought back-to-back animations would look a bit messy and it's fun to have some variety. I also added this blue highlight that appears on squares within range to really help the player. You can see the tiles being used here for the background. I drew these up, but note how the trees look terrible because I cannot draw trees. With these basic mechanics set up and the wind condition added, the game just needed some polishing features. I decided to do the classic game dev move of adding post-processing. Okay, I'm kidding. I didn't add that much post-processing. Just a little bit. Of course, I needed a menu screen, something bright and flashy, so I put this scene together and I think it's quite eye-catching. does a good job. And I got this snazzy scene transition set up, so it's a grass patch growing and shrinking. Pretty cool if I do say so myself. I drew this cute bee as a mouse cursor and added it to the game. Here you can see me prototyping the pause menu, and then here you can see the completed pause menu. The game was making good progress, but I couldn't help but feel like I was forgetting something. Oh right. Sound and music. I got my good friend Crispin to make sounds and music for the game. Here's his YouTube account if you want to check him out, link will be in the description as well. I got the sounds and music imported into my game and set up the audio settings so the volume can be controlled. I got my Trello board emptying out, and all I had left was to actually implement the levels. I went with a pretty steady difficulty curve. The first few levels allow the player to get used to each flower and what they do. It prepares them for this pathfinding mindset. Gradually, paths are trickier to find, with some being misleading and others obscured. There's also just a few with fun levels in there, like a whole level where everything's a tulip. And with about 9 hours to go, I submitted it because the deadline was 4 AM my time. I had a lot of fun with this jam and really enjoyed putting the pieces together to make a simple but pretty good game. If you want to check out the game, link is in the description. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps me to know what kind of content I should make in the future. I recently released a teaser trailer for my game in development, Lou, a Solarpunk text adventure. Please check it out if you fancy. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at FennecFu to stay up to date with my game dev activities, and or join the Discord link in the description. Thanks for watching and catch you next time.